In this comparative study, I will explore to what extent anxiety is depicted through surrealism using Martin Scorsese's 1985 After Hours and Ari Aster's 2023 Beau Is Afraid. Although the dark comedies were produced 38 years apart, both films portray the topic of anxiety through the main character's narrative, navigating an odyssey full of bizarre and harrowing scenarios. The surrealist film movement originated in Paris in the 1920s, evolving from the artistic movement of the same name. André Breton, the movement's founder, defines surrealism as the superior reality of certain forms of previously neglected associations, in the omnipotence of dream. Surrealist works defy conventional artistic norms by subverting the traditional purpose of art, which is to depict reality. The events within these films denounce reality, twisting it through motifs such as the aforementioned dreamlike symbolism as a means of communicating the main character's subconscious fears. Other elements of surrealist films, such as shocking imagery, exploration into the uncanny, and seemingly disconnected scenes recur throughout the film. Martin Scorsese's After Hours navigates a single night in the life of Paul Hackett, a word processor living in New York City. The bizarre story unfolds over the course of the night after Paul meets a mysterious woman named Marcy in a coffee shop. Whilst on his way to Marcy's apartment in downtown Soho, Paul's $20 bill flies out of his cab window, which is where the night's misadventures begin. The film follows the structure of a hero's journey as Paul becomes increasingly entangled in the surreal web that is Soho in his desperate attempt to return back to the Upper East Side. Scorsese uses a linear three-act structure to display the escalating cycle of events within the film. The night seemingly never ends, as each encounter Paul has leads to another, with these incidents growing in bizarrety. After Hours was filmed in 1985 America, a period characterized by societal alienation and a prevalence of mundane, monotonous jobs, such as word processing. Additionally, in the urbanized setting, it was common to experience a sense of desolation and solitude, despite the dense population of the city. For example, Paul encounters various individuals throughout the course of the night, almost constantly being in the presence of someone else, yet he still experiences isolation and a lack of connection with others. Ari Aster's film Beau Is Afraid follows Beau, a chronically anxious man preparing to visit his mother on the anniversary of his father's death.
I'm visiting my mother tomorrow.
However, due to his luggage and key mysteriously disappearing seconds before he embarks for the airport, Beau misses his flight, only to discover that his mother has tragically lost her life in a peculiar accident involving a chandelier. This sets Beau on an epic odyssey to ensure he makes it to her funeral in time. Unlike After Hours, which is devoid of any events that could technically never transpire in real life, Beau Is Afraid weaves ludicrous and inexplicable events into its narrative. Although initially following a similar three-act structure to After Hours, as Beau is set onto his journey, there are various fragmented events that control the narrative of the film, taking place either in Beau's childhood or his imagination. Set in an unnamed dystopian urban hellscape, Beau Is Afraid confronts contemporary American over-consumerism, articulating society's growing fear of surveillance in an era where technology is continually evolving, able to monitor an individual's actions at all times. Both Scorsese and Aster incorporate bizarre events in order to present the main character's escalating anxiety over the course of the films, specifically in their urban settings. Scorsese symbolizes Paul's descent into anxiety through a distinct separation between the Upper East Side, which represents predictability and safety, and Soho, which is characterized as sinister.
Soho meant, the image of my mind, and this kind of played into the movie, was sinister.
The cab ride that transports Paul to Soho is akin to a journey into the unknown, as it begins to show what the night has in store for Paul. As Paul travels further and further from his comfort zone, the cab begins driving more dangerously and scarily, with Paul becoming more and more concerned. The cab ride symbolizes the unpredictability of Paul's adventure, and how he is now resigned to the bizarre events about to unfold. Scorsese uses the character of Marcy as an indicator that things are not as they seem, with her increasingly peculiar language and behavior forcing the audience to question alongside Paul whether he made a mistake in coming. Marcy's previous image of a charming girl in a coffee shop is juxtaposed with her increasingly illogical dialogue
I'm glad you came.
and turbulent actions, foreshadowing the nonsensity Paul is soon to find himself in. The eerie and unusual ambiance is further heightened by the dim, harsh lighting found throughout Soho, adding an element of disorientation and further strengthening Paul's growing fear. Upon finding a prescription ointment for severe burns in Marcy's bag, as well as seeing the scars on her thigh, Paul becomes so nervous that he finally flees. For Beau, the situation is slightly different. Beau is never safe to begin with. In fact, his fate is foretold at the beginning of the movie, when a little boy's toy boat flips over, depicting what will become of Beau. Moreover, within his neighborhood, he's perpetually surrounded by people trying to hurt or kill him. Beau's neighborhood is hyperbolic in nature, reflecting Beau's mental state. The night before his flight, whilst his anxiety is dormant, the sounds from outside his window are ambient and calming, so soothing that he is able to fall asleep to them. However, after his mother berates him, the streets erupt into fights, shootings, and stabbings, conforming to whatever emotions Beau is then experiencing. Beau's fear is taken advantage of, with the crowd entering his apartment and locking him out, symbolic of how his anxiety eliminates his autonomy. The use of unexpected flashbacks also exemplifies the unrelenting anxiety Beau experiences, as he is constantly reliving the traumatic events of his childhood. In the scene where Beau watches a play in the forest, he is suddenly whisked on stage, taken on a journey and living out a long, imaginated, animated life. Filmmakers Cristobal Leon and Joaquin Cosina were brought on to animate the sequence, which serves as Beau's emotional high point, using a green screen, hand-painted backdrops, life-size diorama-esque sets, and rotoscope animation. Leon said the aim of the sequence was to create something where you could not tell exactly how it's made, displaying a hypothetical life Beau could have lived if he was fearless enough to stand up to his mother and rid himself of her. Moreover, the merging of what is real and what isn't allows the audience to understand the confusion of the world, further contributing to the aforementioned dreamlike and nonsensical state, as well as reinforcing Beau's feelings. The events within the sequence shift rapidly from idyllic and peaceful to devastating and catastrophic, mirroring just how quickly a negative incident can impact Beau's then mental state. A common theme throughout After Hours is the passage of time, which is exemplified throughout the film's soundtrack, whose titles correspond with the hours in which the events unfold. The sound of a ticking clock is present in each song. In addition to being shown audibly, clocks are prominently featured visually, with this dual presentation symbolizing how Paul is not able to escape his troubles wherever he goes. Thus, he is in a place of pure surreality, where Paul's experiences appear so bizarre and unfathomable that he begins to question the reality of them, something Scorsese describes as an anxiety dream.
And you wind up in a real anxiety dream.
Similarly, a common motif of surveillance technology is observed in Beau Is Afraid, exemplifying Beau's lack of control and restriction, not only at the hands of his mother, but also by his debilitating anxiety. Though it is not revealed that his mother is the one watching him through security cameras until the end of the film, the uncertainty of who exactly is watching Beau adds to his confusion, the sense that he is simply living in a world without interacting with it. Finally, with the reveal that his surveillance was in preparation for his trial, and his mother acting as the prosecutor, it again reiterates the fact that almost everything Beau fears actually occurs in his life, rendering him wholly unsafe. Both Scorsese and Astor portray a fear of persecution through surrealistic techniques, in the fact that each character the protagonists meet end up chasing them, wishing to harm or kill them, a literal representation of their fears. For Paul, this is seen when he is falsely mistaken as a burglar who had been plaguing the neighborhood, which leads to an angry mob hunting him. He then meets Gail, who allows him to seek refuge in her house and even offers to drive him home in her ice cream truck. That is, until she sees one of the posters with Paul's face on them, calling over the rest of the mob and joining them in chasing Paul. From this point on, Paul is relentlessly followed, inducing the nightmarish state he cannot break away from. In Beau Is Afraid, Beau is nursed to health by the couple that accidentally ran him over, Grace and Roger, with them promising once he is recovered he can go to his mother's funeral. When this day comes, the couple's daughter forces him to drink a can of paint before drinking it himself. Grace walks in on the act, violently blaming Beau for her daughter's death and sending Jeeves, a traumatized army veteran, to kill him as Beau flees into the woods. Paralleling Beau's own strained relationship with his mother, Grace's declaration that Jeeves must kill Beau forewarns the film's climax, in which Beau is killed at the hands of his own mother. Both protagonists believe they have found a haven amidst the macabre situations they have found themselves in. However, it is due to miscommunication that both Paul and Beau are hunted by the people who initially sought to help them. Another common theme found in both films is that of isolation, used to exemplify the fact that the main characters are alone in their journey and do not have anyone to rely on for assistance. In After Hours, this is seen when Paul sees Kiki, Marcy's roommate, in a nightclub, who wants to help him in his attempt to get home. However, the loud music and blinding lights disorient Paul, preventing him from reaching her. Thus, he is once again thwarted in his attempt to get someone to help him. Although Paul is surrounded by people and is only a few feet away from safety in the form of Kiki, he is unable to get to her, instead being grabbed and his head forcibly shaved. The bustling atmosphere of a nightclub, in theory, represents the opposite of isolation, yet the surreal nature of Paul's night makes it so that even when he is encircled by people, he cannot communicate with any of them. In the final scene of Beau Is Afraid, when Beau thinks he has escaped into the peaceful night, he instead sails into a cave in which his trial is taking place.
We are gathered now to assess the extent of the subject's guilt.
Beau's entire life is examined, with the prosecutor naming his guilty acts from the moment he was born. Beau is surrounded by people, and his only attest to him being innocent is one singular attorney, whose voice is far quieter than the prosecutor, symbolizing Beau effectively being shut down and silenced.
A suffering member of his own species.
Upon his attorney being thrown off the ledge, Beau is completely alone, with no one in the gigantic arena vouching for him. Both protagonists resign to their fate, with Paul not caring about his own well-being and allowing himself to be papier-mâchéd, and Beau simply becoming silent before the boat flips him upside down. Both After Hours and Beau Is Afraid present fascinating narratives reflective of their cultural contexts. Themes of anxiety and disillusionment are exhibited through the surrealistic style and exploration of the character's psyche.